Now, from Wish TV, your local news source, this is All Indiana Politics.
Good Sunday morning once again. I'm Phil Sanchez. Thank you for joining us on All Indiana Politics. We begin with another historic ruling from the Supreme Court. The court effectively ruled affirmative action in higher education is unconstitutional. President Joe Biden addressed the nation shortly after that ruling.
I've always believed that the promise of America is big enough for everyone to succeed, and that every generation of Americans, we have benefited by opening the doors of opportunity just a little bit wider to include those who've been left behind. I believe our colleges are stronger when they're racially diverse. Our nation is stronger because we are tapping into the full range of talent in this nation. I also believe that while talent, creativity, and hard work are everywhere across this country, not equal opportunity. It is not everywhere across this country. We cannot let this decision be the last word. I want to emphasize, we cannot let this decision be the last word. While the court can render a decision, it cannot change what America stands for. America is an idea unique in the world, an idea of hope and opportunity, of possibilities, of giving everyone a fair shot.
Meanwhile, audio has emerged which purportedly depicts former President Donald Trump showing a classified document to a writer. Congressman Andre Carson is the ranking member of the House Counterintelligence Committee. He talked to our government reporter Garrett Berquist about the exchange and the recent hack of the Department of Energy.
Let's welcome in Congressman Andre Carson. Congressman, welcome back to the program.
Always an honor. Thank you.
So I want to begin with the audio that surfaced of former President Donald Trump discussing a potential classified document that was in his possession. From your intelligence background, how grave of a threat do his actions pose if the accusations in the indictment against him are correct?
Well, I think it's unfortunate. I think it speaks to the recklessness that has represented his leadership and his presidency. I mean, that kind of disregard and insensitivity to classified information that absolutely puts our national security in jeopardy. I think it speaks to his lack of leadership and really a lack of discretion in that regard to kind of minimize and trivialize the nature of these documents and how he has them. He's almost boasting, if you will. It's unfortunate.
The initial polls suggest that this case is only further solidifying his support among the Republican base. Does that worry you going into the 2024 election?
Well, I'm always concerned. I mean, I think that Donald Trump, regardless of what one may think about him, he has a special kind of charisma. I've seen this charisma in person. He's quite likable in person. And so the fact that so many people are galvanizing and mobilizing around him, it speaks to a special place where we are in this country. It speaks to the sentiment of the voters and how people view leadership and how they view Donald Trump. I mean, I've been very critical of his policies, but he's viewed as a very decisive leader, even though many of his decisions have had reckless implications. He's viewed as somebody who is transparent in many regards, and people appreciate transparency, and as somebody who is authentically Donald Trump.
I want to turn to the recent ransomware attack against the Department of Energy. You're the ranking member of the House Counterintelligence Committee. How grave of a threat does that attack pose to national security?
Yeah, you know, I'm always concerned by reports that come out of the DOE along with other governmental agencies. We were recently victims of a ransomware attack conducted by a Russian hacking group in our government. And, you know, this incident, I think it really underscores the threat from a variety of groups, which has been growing over the past years. I think we have to take these threats very seriously and build up our defenses in a meaningful way, particularly where our critical infrastructure is concerned. So we have to do a lot more to really bolster our cybersecurity posture, both within the government and outside of the government, and confront threats from state actors as well as criminals.
How seriously should the state government here in the state of Indiana take this, along with academic institutions such as IU? And what sorts of things can Congress work with them on to help bolster their defenses?
Well, having worked for the state for nearly a decade, particularly with the Indiana Department of Homeland Security and the excise police. We do a lot with our university systems, and I think in collaboration with our universities, we're going to produce more trained cybersecurity professionals who can do these jobs, which is yet another reason why I support STEM education for young people here in Indianapolis and across our state.
Congressional Democrats have again introduced the Equality Act. This would add sexual orientation and gender identity to the classes that are protected under the Civil Rights Act. Does the spate of legislation targeting transgender people give this added emphasis?
I'm happy to see the reintroduction of the Equality Act. I'm a co-founder of the Congressional Equality Caucus. I think the Equality Act will effectively prohibit discrimination against LGBTQ plus individuals in housing, education, employment, and so much more. And so last week, we finally passed the Respect for Marriage Act, which means that no matter what state you're in, your marriage is recognized. And so it was long overdue, but more importantly, that is a very historic measure that I was proud to support. And so I think the bottom line is for people who may have concerns is that this is a civil rights issue. No one should be discriminated against for who they are. You know, members of the LGBTQ plus community should be able to access the same housing, education, and opportunities as the rest of us.
I want to address an issue closer to home. The Indianapolis City County Council recently approved a measure to hire and fund 3 special assistant U.S. attorneys to prosecute gun crimes here in the city at the federal level. Was that the right move? Is this something Congress should have worked on instead?
Well, I think it's always good to act in collaboration, but as we've seen, Congress can be very slow to act when you're talking about issues, particularly localized issues. And so in these cases, I applaud our local leaders for acting very quickly and decisively in addressing this critical issue. I was just in Illinois a few weeks ago, and they were nudging me and other Hoosiers about the easy accessibility of firearms that folks from Illinois have accessed since the Capone days. And so we have to do something, and so I applaud our local leaders for acting very swiftly.
All right, coming up, a series of historic rulings from the nation's highest court. We delve into them with Indiana's best political team. Welcome back to All Indiana Politics as we welcome back 2 members of Indiana's best political team, Democrat Laura Beck and Republican Mario Massolmani. Good to see you both. We have a lot to unpack today, okay, just from the Supreme Court alone this week. Let's begin with the ruling on affirmative action, guys. Mario, states that banned affirmative action saw less college enrollment among students of color. What's to stop that from happening across the country now?
I think there's some easy fixes. I'm a political junkie and a legal junkie, so I was watching a lot of the analysis over the last night. One of the easiest ways to do that is to get rid of legacies. Allowing people to automatically be admitted because their father or grandfather or parent went there or one of their siblings, I think is an easy way to make sure that we are not discriminating against people that might not have had those opportunities generations before us. So that's an easy way. Another way is by using wealth inequality. One of the things that I think that colleges can look at is maybe giving special exceptions to people that might be underprivileged or people that have less earning capacity, and families that have less earning capacity, and giving those a better and more clear understanding or ability to enter college. I think those are some easy examples of making sure that we don't all of a sudden get rid of and less diversify our colleges.
Laura, I'll let you respond, and then I have another question about this on the back end.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think Mario brings up some great points, and it's always so nice to be with him because he is so thoughtful in his responses. Piggybacking on that a little bit, I mean, I'm incredibly disappointed with the Supreme Court. I feel like we've got 6 people of privilege who've chosen to enforce their narrow worldview on the rest of us. But when we look at colleges, I think Chalkbeat had some really interesting numbers about Purdue's enrollment in terms of people who are Hispanic, Latino, and Black. And Purdue has 7% students who are Hispanic, Latino, 2% who are Black, 13% who are Asian, 5% two or more races. It's pretty similar too with IU. So we have a lot of work to do in this state, and I feel like the Supreme Court is not making that work easier for us, because we are better as a people when we have the most amount of diversity we possibly can. That's what this country looks like now. That's what this country is going to be like in the future. And to go by the narrow views of a few does not serve us well moving into the future.
Laura, Chief Justice John Roberts wrote the Equal Protection Clause has to be applied to everyone equally. Your response?
Well, I think it's easy for a white man of privilege to say that. I think if you are not in that position, you look at the world perhaps a little differently. I think this is, again, a very diverse country, and we are looking at, there are 6 people who are representing some very powerful interests, 2 of whom have been corrupted by those, who are making these decisions and that are completely out of step with the mainstream. I mean, look at abortion. You've got affirmative action. Now you've got the student loan relief program.
We're going to talk about that here momentarily.
It's as if they are just disconnected from reality.
Phil, can I jump in really quickly on that issue?
Quickly,
you know, basically what the Supreme Court is saying is that everyone is fundamentally equal, no matter what their color of skin. And if you look at what has been taking place and transpiring over the last decade or so, the people that are most penalized by this are Asian Americans. I'm an Asian American, came to this country as an immigrant from Sri Lanka. If you look at it, if you look at some of the different criteria that Harvard, Yale, Princeton are taking into consideration, Asian Americans are deeply impacted and hurt by these quota requirements.
Yeah. Well, a lot to think about there. I have another topic that I want to address as well, and that's the court student debt ruling. The Supreme Court held the Biden administration said the Biden administration exceeded its authority. Loan repayments resume in October, as you very well know. Laura, does the court have a point here?
Well, I think based on my previous comments, I'm probably not going to be in agreement with the court's point. I think it's one of the big challenges here is that you've got 20 million people who are going to have to be repaying really a significant amount of money. And when you think about student debt and what that looks like for people can't get ahead because of that student debt. And so the same opportunities that were afforded to people in my generation, Mario's generation, college wasn't as expensive. You didn't have the crushing debt and the economic factors. We all want people to succeed. We all want people to go on and do well. And I don't think people should be penalized for trying to better themselves. And then they basically, in the long run, are paying the cost of just this crushing debt. And again,
all right, you know
6 people who
Mario,
are out of touch with the mainstream.
30 seconds left. 30 seconds left before we take a break. Go ahead.
2 points. The first is that this was grabbing of power by the executive branch. The Constitution of the United States says that Congress has the power to determine if how the purse strings are going to be spent. 2, regarding this issue is basically the federal government Biden does not have that ability. And third, one of the things that is really troubling is that I decided to take out $150,000 in student loans to go to law school. Right, people in McDonald's who decided not to go to college or law school should not have to be required to pay my student debt.
All fair points. We'll be right back. We got more to get to. Stick with us. We're coming right back. And welcome back to All Indiana Politics. Still with us are Democrat Laura Beck and Republican Mario Masalamani. Let's turn now to the Indiana Supreme Court. It has lifted an order blocking the state's new abortion ban on privacy grounds. Mario, the court says the state constitution does provide a right to an abortion in cases of medical necessity. The ACLU, however, says it might pursue that further in this lawsuit. Could that exemption lead to this law's undoing? Your thoughts?
I don't believe so. I think that the law as it currently stands that's passed by the General Assembly takes that into consideration. Additionally, the Supreme Court, in its opinion that was issued today, talks about how the General Assembly can define and curtail and limit and restrict abortions depending on the mother's life and other factors. And I think this law does take that into consideration. So I don't believe that that's going to be something that's going to be attacked. I'm curious to see. One of the things that hasn't been addressed yet, another case that's coming down the pipeline, is regarding the religious freedom. That is a group of plaintiffs, both from the Jewish and Muslim faith, have made a claim arguing that there is religious freedom as it pertains to our Constitution, Indiana and U.S. Constitution, that would put this or make this law inapplicable. So I think that that might be a potentially stronger argument in this case than the current law current lawsuit that was.
I want to get Laura in here because we got a couple of other things we want to talk about. Based on the court's ruling, Laura, how much of an uphill battle, a climb, does the privacy lawsuit itself face?
Well, I think Mario has a good point on the religious freedom piece, and I think that's going to be really interesting as we watch that go through the courts. I think one of the biggest challenges when you look at this law, it's one of the most restrictive, if not the most restrictive in the nation. It was passed very quickly. There wasn't a lot of medical thought behind it, unfortunately. And I think what we're going to see is that Indiana has one of the worst maternal health care ratings in the nation. And in rural areas, women don't have access to a hospital. They don't have access to prenatal care. So as we're taking away, we want to be the most pro-life state in the nation, and we're taking away reproductive health options for women, then we need to be adding in much more protections for women, their health, boosting maternal health care. And I don't think we're going to see that coming out of the General Assembly, frankly. The other thing I think we're all concerned about is that, as someone who is probably the only one in this section who's given birth, pregnancy is complicated and things can go wrong very quickly. They can go right quickly, but they can also go wrong quickly. And there are real world consequences to that. And I'm afraid that we're going to see medical professionals who we desperately need leaving the state because they don't want to get prosecuted for making medical recommendations to do the very things that women need to do to have successful pregnancies.
We'll see what happens on that. Turning to other headlines, audio has now been published which purports to depict former President Donald Trump showing off classified documents to a writer. This is the conversation described in the indictment against him. Mario, you're the defense attorney here. Could this audio send Donald Trump to prison?
I don't think so. And I think Donald Trump has already started making statements regarding the fact that he wasn't actually showing classified documents to this reporter, but rather had in his hand or was grasping, I think, plans for his golf course. So I think that there is some wiggle room, right? In the U.S. Constitution and our criminal justice system, you have to prove or find someone guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. I believe that already, and I would not say or have my clients do this, but he's already started to poke holes in this in the public by some of his comments that he's making to the press.
Yeah, well, there you go. Let's talk about the press because, Laura, you're the communications professional on this panel. How much does this undercut Trump's messaging on the documents case?
Well, there's the court of the legal court, and then there's what I always tell my clients, the court of public opinion. And I don't think he's doing anything to help himself in the court of public opinion. I mean, the best thing he could do is just to stop talking about it and listen to his legal team and his PR team. But I think he thinks he's the smartest guy in the room. I mean, look, every time he opens his mouth on these things, all he wants to do is show everybody he's in the know. He's the smartest guy in the room. He's really, with it behind the scenes. And it really just hurts him, I think, in the legal perspective. So best thing he could do is stop talking, but I don't think he can help himself.
Mario, you want to respond? Go ahead. 30 seconds.
Phil, as a criminal defense attorney, I always tell my clients, you have a right to remain silent. Please utilize that right. And I never tell my clients to talk to the media or law enforcement. So free legal advice today. If law enforcement or the media want to talk to you, keep your mouth shut.
Well, there you go. Happy 4th of July, guys. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks a lot. It's good to be with you, as always.
We'll be right back. Thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics this week. We'll be back here next Sunday morning at 9:30. You can also find our brand new All Indiana Politics podcast. It's part of the All Indiana Podcast Network over at wishtv.com. Have a great 4th of July and a great rest of your weekend.